People stared when the scarred girl stood up, but no one expected who would take her hand, or what song would play next. What happened in the next few minutes shattered a billionaire's pride and healed a heart the world had written off. Right finger before we begin, if you believe kindness still changes lives, tap like and subscribe to True Kindness Tales. Your support helps us share stories that matter. The ballroom glittered with wealth, crystal chandeliers, silk gowns, polished shoes that had never known dust, but Daniel Reyes felt invisible as he moved between tables, balancing trays with practiced grace. A single father and a waiter by necessity, Daniel worked 3 jobs to raise his 8-year-old son, Leo, ever since Leo's mother passed away. Tonight's event was hosted by Victor Blackwell, a billionaire whose name commanded silence and respect wherever it was spoken. Victor was known for power, control, and perfection, especially when it came to his family. That was why most guests pretended not to notice the young woman seated alone near the edge of the room. Her name was Eleanor Blackwell. Once celebrated for her beauty, she had survived a devastating fire 2 years ago that left burns across her face and arms. Since then, Victor kept her hidden from public view, ashamed of what the world might say, and worse, of what he himself felt. Eleanor watched the dance floor as couples laughed and swayed, her hands folded tightly in her lap, eyes lowered whenever someone glanced her way. Daniel noticed her because she reminded him of Leo on his first day back to school after losing his mother, quiet, shrinking, bracing for rejection. As Daniel refilled glasses near her table, the band began playing an old, gentle song, one Daniel recognized instantly. It was the same song he used to hum while cooking dinner with his late wife, the same song he danced to in their tiny kitchen when life was simple and love was enough. Eleanor's fingers twitched as the melody filled the room, and without thinking, Daniel paused. He saw tears welling in her eyes, not loud or dramatic, just heavy and tired. He hesitated. Waiters didn't interrupt guests, especially not the billionaire's daughter, but something stronger than fear pushed him forward. He set the tray down, bent slightly, and spoke softly. "Would you like to dance?" The room seemed to freeze. Eleanor looked up, shocked, her scars fully visible now. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Across the room, Victor Blackwell stiffened, his jaw tightening in fury. Eleanor's first instinct was to refuse. Years of silence had trained her well, but Daniel didn't pity her, didn't look away either. He simply smiled, warm and steady. Slowly, trembling, she placed her hand in his. As they stepped onto the dance floor, whispers turned to gasps. Daniel led her gently, careful, respectful, as if the world wasn't watching. For the first time in years, Eleanor felt seen, not as a mistake, not as a burden, but as a person worthy of joy. And as the song continued, something began to crack, inside her, and inside her father. Victor Blackwell had built his empire on control. Markets bent to his will, people followed his commands, and mistakes were erased with money and influence. But as he watched his daughter dance with a waiter, a nobody, his chest burned with anger and humiliation. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. Eleanor was meant to stay out of sight, protected from stares, spared from judgment. Or so he told himself. In truth, her scars reminded him of a night he couldn't control, a fire he couldn't stop, and a daughter he couldn't fix. On the dance floor, Daniel spoke quietly as they moved. He told Eleanor about Leo, how he used to hide behind Daniel's leg when strangers came too close, how music helped him feel brave again. Eleanor listened, surprised by how normal the conversation felt. No one had spoken to her like this in years. Not carefully, not kindly, just honestly. The song shifted into its chorus, and Daniel hummed along. Eleanor recognized it now. It was a song her mother used to play on Sunday mornings, back when laughter filled their home and mirrors didn't hurt. Her breathing shook. Daniel noticed and slowed their steps. "You're safe," he whispered. "You don't have to be perfect to be here." Tears spilled freely now, but she didn't stop dancing. The crowd, once judgmental, grew quiet. Phones lowered. Smiles softened. Something sacred was happening, something no amount of wealth could buy. Victor felt it too, and it terrified him. Memories flooded back. Eleanor as a child, dancing barefoot in the living room, begging him to watch. He had always been busy. Always distracted. When the fire happened, he blamed the world, but deep down, he blamed himself. Anger surged as a shield against guilt. He strode toward the bandstand, demanding the music stop. But before he could speak, the final verse played, a line about scars being proof of survival, not shame. Victor froze. It felt like the song was accusing him. Daniel and Eleanor stopped dancing, the room holding its breath. Eleanor looked at her father, expecting rage, rejection, the familiar cold distance. Instead, she saw something else: conflict, pain, and finally, tears. Victor's pride, polished over decades, cracked in front of everyone. He realized the truth he had avoided. The scars he hid weren't on Eleanor's skin, they were in his heart. And a single dad waiter had done what billions never could: remind his daughter she was alive. Silence filled the ballroom until Victor Blackwell did the unthinkable. He applauded. Slowly at first, then fully, his hands trembling. The room followed, applause rising not for wealth or status, but for courage. Victor approached Daniel and Eleanor, his voice thick when he spoke. "I was wrong," he said, not to the crowd, but to his daughter. "I tried to protect you by hiding you, when all you needed was to be loved out loud." Eleanor broke down, years of loneliness collapsing as her father pulled her into an embrace. Daniel stepped back quietly, ready to disappear again into the background, but Victor stopped him. "What's your name?" "Daniel," he replied. Victor nodded. "You reminded me who my daughter is, and who I failed to be." Weeks later, Daniel was called back to the Blackwell estate, not as a waiter, but as a guest. Victor had established a foundation in Eleanor's name, funding burn recovery programs and emotional support for survivors. Eleanor began attending events openly, scars visible, confidence growing. As for Daniel, Victor offered him a job managing the foundation, but Daniel asked for something else. "Help me secure my son's future," he said simply. Victor did more than that. He ensured Leo's education, housing, and stability, but Daniel continued working, teaching his son the same lesson he had lived: dignity matters more than status. On a quiet evening months later, Daniel danced with Leo in their small apartment to that same song. Eleanor sent a message that night: "I danced today, and I didn't hide." Daniel smiled, knowing that sometimes the smallest acts, one song, one dance, one moment of kindness, can change lives forever. Blue Heart, if this story touched your heart, please like the video and subscribe to True Kindness Tales. Your support helps us share more real stories that restore faith in humanity.